All right, so today's game is called Breakout. In this game, we're trying to create something that's a little bit like Pong with bricks that you destroy. So it's going to involve a bouncing object. I'm going to call it a ball in my game. There's a player-controlled bar or bat or whatever the thing is that it bounces off of that you use. And there are bricks, which are going to be the things that are going to be destroyed and give you points. We're going to use something called free directional movement. That means that we're going to use all 360 degrees instead of just using diagonals, up, down, left, right. We're going to use something called inheritance, which will allow us to make our game easier. It's a little confusing at first, but we'll get there. There's a controller that's going to deal with startup and ending commands. The controller, so before we were using our avatar to be the controller that did startup, lives, all that kind of stuff. The thing is that the avatar might die, and we don't want it to stop doing things like going to the next room and whatnot. So we're actually going to put in an invisible object that's going to do with that. We're going to have multiple rooms, and we're going to put in a little cheat key where if we hit the letter N, we're going to go to the next level. That's so that you don't have to play through all 5 levels you've made to get to the 6th one and see if you did things right. And then levels are going to end when all of the bricks are gone, and you have to have instructions in this game. All right, away we go. So I've got a new game here, and I'm going to be using some sprites that are in the README in the GameMaker 7 folder. GameMaker 7 had some better Breakout sprites, in my opinion, and so I'm going to start with those. So to begin with, I'm going to create a ball object, which is going to be the thing bouncing around. So I create a new sprite for it. So to load this in, I'm going to go to my desktop, the README, GameMaker, Sprite Resources, GameMaker 7. So deep inside of Sprite Resources in GameMaker 7, there's a series of sprites, and the ones I'm going to be using are from Breakout 1. So just to give you an idea, there's a ball object, there's a couple of bats or bars is what I'm going to call them, a series of bombs, a bunch of power-ups, some ghosts, some bricks. So there's a variety of things that are in here. So let me start with the ball object. So I'm going to call this ball underscore s for the ball sprite, and now I'm going to create the object that goes with that. So this will be the ball object. It's going to have that sprite. This guy's not actually going to be solid, though. So let me go ahead and create the next thing, which is going to be the bar object. Bar underscore o, or s for the bar sprite. I think I'm just going to use bat1 for this. So I've got the thing that's going to bounce around and the thing I'm going to control that moves in the room. I need an object for this. So I'm going to create a bar object, has that sprite. Not that sprite. He's going to have that sprite. There we go. And this guy's going to be solid. The difference between a solid and a non-solid object has to do with collisions. If an object is solid, the thing running into it will stop and not go inside of it. If an object is not solid, the thing running into it will actually move inside the sprite, and then it'll call the collision. So I don't want the ball object to actually move inside of this, so I'm going to make this object solid. Now something else I'm going to do is put in walls so that the ball object is largely contained. I'm going to make it so that the bar is at the bottom of the screen, and the ball object can bounce on the left, right, and top walls, but the bottom will be open. So I need to create a wall. I don't think there's a good one in Breakout. I think the good one is one level up in various. Well, this is the one that I like to use anyway. You can use anything for your walls as long as it's some sprite that you like. So this will be the wall sprite, and it's going to need an object as well. The wall object is going to be solid and have that sprite. Let me set up the room to give you an idea of what that looks like. So here's the room. I'm going to take my wall, and it's going to be along the top, the right side, and the left side. It's going to be a ball somewhere in the middle, and the bar object is going to be somewhere towards the bottom. So each of these objects has an X and a Y position, but where exactly is this? I mean, this is a fairly long sprite. Which of these various pixels is the X and Y position of the bar? It actually matters in this case. We're going to do something with this later on, which has to do with where the center is. If you look at the sprite itself, so I've opened up the bar sprite, there's a little crosshairs on the picture that's in the upper left at the moment. By default, they start in the upper left. I'm actually going to want to try and center this. So there's a center button over here on the sprite, and that moves it to the exact center. You can also change the numbers here for the origin, and that'll change the center. You can also click and drag in the picture to move the center around. So what I'd like to do is actually move it so that it's more in the center of this, what I can see. The same is true of the ball object. So if I go into the ball object, I also want to put the center kind of in the middle of that thing as well. We're going to do calculations later on that the center matters. So whenever I'm talking about the X and Y position of the bar, now it's the middle of that object instead of the upper left, whereas the walls are still the upper left. I'd like to actually make this bar move now. So I'm going to open up the bar object, and I'm going to add in key presses for making it move left and right. So I'm going to add in a key press left, have it move to the left, speed of, I don't know, 7. And then I'm going to add a key press to the right, have it move to the right at a speed of 7. I want to run this because I haven't tested it yet, and that makes me paranoid. Good. And off the room it goes. So I still need to put in the collision event with the wall. Also, when I let up on the key, it still keeps going. I'd like to make it so that it actually stops when I let up on keys. So I'm going to add in key releases. So I'm going to do a key release left. When I let up on the left key, what I'm going to do is have it stop. I'd also like to add a key release right and have it stop. Just the center thing in the red arrows. And then finally, I'd like to make it if this thing has a collision with the wall object, I'd also like it to stop. So now I can let up on the keys and it stops, and if I run into the wall, it stops. Now there's a subtle thing that's going on here. You may not be able to see it very well, but this is actually not getting exactly to the wall. And the reason why is that if it goes 7 more pixels, it'll be inside the wall. Since the wall is solid, this thing won't be allowed to go in it. But I would like to make sure that this bar object can actually go all the way to the left and contact this wall. This brings up the idea of direction. So every object in GameMaker has a direction. So if I go, to the room, when this ball is moving around the room, it has a built-in direction that's being kept track of. If it's going to the right, it's going in the 0 degrees direction. Up is 90 degrees, left is 180, down is 270, and then you have all the degrees in between. If you get to 360, that's the same as 0. It's going to the right. So it starts going to the right, and as you go counterclockwise around, it increases. So whenever we're talking about direction, we have to use those numbers. So if I want something to be going to the left and it asks me for the direction, that's actually 180 degrees that I'm going to put in. The reason why this matters is I'd like this bar object to move to contact the wall over here when it collides with it. So what I'm going to do is, before this collides with the wall, I'd like to actually have it move so it's right next to it. So in the Move tab, right next to Bounce, there's this red arrow going directly to a wall. That's called Move to Contact. I need that to happen before I stop moving. So it's asking which direction I'm going, and I'm actually going to type in the word direction, spelled correctly in all lowercase. And what that does is it makes the bar object move until it's right next to the wall. So if I run this, it slides over and actually directly contacts it. Whereas if I was going to the right, it would keep moving to the right until it contacted it. The direction matters. So if I put this in the other order, when you stop moving, by default your direction goes back to 0. So what this effect has is if I go all the way to the left, it shoots me back to the right, because it moves to contact here, it stops, sets the direction to 0, and then it moves to contact in the 0 direction, which is all the way to the right. So it actually matters the order. So you can always click and drag these things around to change the order.